Welcome, everyone, to LeadsCon Live on LinkedIn Live. I am Ian McCrae, head of content here at LeadsCon, and we are 1 week out from the big show in Las Vegas. LeadsCon takes place next week, kicking off exactly, 1 week from tomorrow at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. If you haven't already registered, you can do so now. But today, I'm joined by three people who will be there on stage, on the main stage, next Thursday for what I think is going to be one of the most direct, unfiltered conversations of the entire program. Our keynote State of the Industry session, sponsored by PX and driven by the results of their latest survey, which just wrapped up. Let's welcome our panel. Robin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Faraday?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Robin Spencer. I'm the COO at Faraday. I oversee all of our client-facing orgs. And so for those who do not know Faraday, we are a context engine. So we are all consumer data in one place, everything from identity data through predictive data, such as a lead score. So when it comes to LeadsCon, we're really excited to talk about that lead scoring and how you get the most value out of your funnel.
Excellent. And Matt, can you do the same?
Yeah, Matt Curtis, VP of Marketing and Strategic Initiatives at ARS. So ARS is a private equity-owned HVAC and plumbing provider across the U.S., 55 branches, 35 different brands. And my role at ARS is sort of a combination of the strategy, so what decisions and where we want to spend money on the marketing side, but then the intersection of our marketing technology stack, our BI and our IT tech stack. So kind of all the big projects that touch how we get a potential lead consumer call from the front end, where do we spend the money, to the back end of how do we turn that into a transaction.
Excellent. Thank you for that overview. And one of my favorite folks from the lead gen industry, and somebody that I've worked with since day one, joining LeadsCon just about 5 years ago today. And of course, that would be Boss Offers from PX. Boss, could you do the same?
Sure. Quick intro from my end. Hi, guys. I'm Boss Offers. I'm Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of PX. We just marked our 16-year anniversary, which feels like an eternity in this space. I think it is an eternity in this space. So looking forward in the session next week, only 5 years ahead, I think it's going to be pretty easy. No, I'm kidding. It's going to be pretty hard. But we're going to have some great content around it. And for those that don't know PX just yet today, we're a customer acquisition platform. So we help many brands that will be at LeadsCon next week by centralizing their lead buying and call buying activities. And we're doing that through technology that we built over the years by really taking control of pricing, targeting, lead distribution, you name it. MPX has, today we have a marketplace that's live in 28 different verticals. So pretty diversified in regards of all the different categories, which I hope to share some fun facts around in next week's session as well, to benchmark a little bit between those verticals.
Yeah. I and the rest of the industry is very much looking forward to the survey results next week. Jumping right to it, I guess, can you, and Boss, if we could stay with you, is the lead form evolving here, or is it just slowly being replaced? What is in the advent of AI, with regulations, everything that's going on right now? At the end of the day, is the lead form, the traditional lead form, on trial? What does that future hold?
I think that's one of the bigger questions that everyone has on the top of their mind for next week to discuss with peers in the industry as well. Will a lead form still exist in 4 or 5 years from now? And I just referenced the 16 years back when I think about 2010, how lead gen looked like in the US. It hasn't changed that dramatically, right? Lead forms are still pretty similar to what people were running 15 years ago. And in fact, PX jumped back into the auto insurance vertical a year ago. We had not been in it 7 years ago. We felt like, from a lead form perspective, zero innovation really took place on that side. So it's hard to say if the lead form is going to disappear. Now, I do think the lead form is going to evolve. I think one of the most interesting, innovative changes that could apply is where consumers are not only interfacing with lead forms, but maybe the agents of consumers are interfacing with lead forms. I think that's probably like the biggest one that we're all thinking about, and we already see that with websites, how content is being developed and how SEO is evolving so quickly, where SEO is not only being written anymore for consumers, but also making sure that all the big platforms can really process all the content that's in there. So will lead forms evolve? Yes. Will they disappear? I think they will just rapidly evolve to the next step. And I think us as human beings we always think that things are disappearing. 10 years ago, we talked to Matt and I make jokes about it, that everyone thought direct mail was going to disappear, and direct mail is some of the bigger channels for many of the brands today. So is it going to evolve? Yes. Is it going to disappear? I don't think so.
Yeah. Robin, what do you say?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think there's two components to it for me. I think it's going to evolve, and I think it's going to give us more ways to trip on ourselves and more ways to reach our consumers in an easier way. I think with the advent and kind of with AI amongst us, and with being able to have more ways to reach customers, being able to understand them better, people expect a more personalized experience. And I think that starts with the form. And so I'm excited for the conversation next week to talk about, when are agents interacting with those forms versus humans, and what's the context you need underneath it to make sure you really do have the best personalized experience.
Yeah, Matt, can you share a little bit of color on the future of the form or the perspective through your lens?
Yeah, and I think about it like from the consumer lens is, I think, the important thing, which is as long as consumers still want to fill out a form, the form will still, we're not going to get rid of something that a consumer wants just because I want something different, right? And so, we have calls, we have forms, we have e-commerce flows, we have self-booking flows. All of those are options for a consumer to interact. And to me, it's more about giving the customer more options and letting them pick how they want to interact with, and we have some consumers who, their preference is to go through a form and fill that out. We have other customers now, and we're seeing, it's growing, right? Where consumers want to maybe start at a form-like experience and then self-book, right? And schedule themselves, and they don't want to talk to somebody, right? But I think as long as there are consumers, and that consumer behavior doesn't change instantly, it takes time to change, right? And it evolves, and you'll have some people that'll be early adopters that'll be using AI chatbots to book their appointments, and you'll have a whole bunch who will be doing the same thing because that's how they do it. So,
and Ian, if I might add one particular maybe fun fact point around some of the collection data that we retrieved already from the survey that circulated in the last couple of weeks that we'll present on next week, is that 52% of respondents don't think forms will change, but that a lead will change. The concept of a lead will change, where a lead will just be much more rich in terms of the data points that will be transacted upon. And I think that's a shift that we've already seen in the past. When I think about, we work closely with Matt's team at ARS. Like, a lead previously was a quick short form request for an HVAC system, and what we're trying to do is to make that lead as intentful as possible by collecting as much data on that particular lead. And I know Robin and I have had super interesting conversations what Faraday is doing in this space today about appending data on that. So I think like the quick leads are going to be gone, and it's going to be a much more sophisticated lead where the consumer will show their preference. They will showcase really what they're looking for, and maybe already are much more deeper funnel in terms of their choice in terms of what they're looking for.
Yeah, I would just add on to that.
Yeah. Excellent.
To that personalized piece, like Boss, what you're getting at is, I think the lead becomes more sophisticated because of the context you have around it. And then it becomes on all of those of us who are dealing with those leads to then have a more sophisticated or personalized journey from that context. And I think when, Matt, to your point, consumers get more sophisticated, or if we look at it from their point of view, when they know what they want, and then we can meet them in that journey. I think that's what I'm most excited about for where the industry could go, and I think the front runners are going.
Yeah, and I think as we think about, leads coming in, the experience for the agent, whether that's a human or an agentic AI, the more information they have, the better that experience can be for the consumer, right? Because the more I know about them, the more I know, why they came to us, where they came from, what they're looking for, right? I know information, and potentially about their property, about their location, about, have they interacted with me previously? If so, what did they buy? All those things, those all improve the customer experience, which improves my ability to transact on them, and over time can actually improve the value of that lead and the customer experience, right? I think that's the big thing for us, is trying to figure out the best way to enable the rep to have a good job, to do a good job, enable the consumer to have a good experience, and enable the conversion to happen on the back end, which all drive the value of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Sorry, I had some connectivity issues there. If we could, the performance marketing industry has been talking about AI for a couple of years now, but talk and adoption, as we know, are two very different things. Where does the industry actually stand right now in terms of, are we early, mid-wave, or further along than people realize with applications of these new AI tools? And we'll get into specific use cases a little bit later in this discussion. But in general, where are we in this adoption curve? Robin, can we start with you?
I think we are very early in the adoption curve, just because of how quickly AI is moving. And yet, to your point, we've been hearing about it for several years now. So I think this is the year where it's like, whatever you were talking about a couple of years ago, it better be proving actual value. Otherwise, it sort of go back to blank slate and start from first principles about getting set up with the right ROI to drive real revenue. And I think for any of the tools that people were trying out that do not have ROI behind them, it's time to clear those off the counter so that the right ones can come in. Because I think it is so much about the AI as a technology and then how you actually implement it. And so if somebody's lobbing it over the fence, I'm not sure we're going to get much further than where we currently are. But I think we're in that cool inflection moment where it could either really take off and people are really getting real traction, but people are asking the right questions. We've definitely seen that with our clients of saying, okay, show the actual ROI. Where does this actually bring in revenue? And those are the right questions. You should be holding people are touting kind of AI as having those answers for you.
Yeah. Boss, what about you? And you sit in a position where you can see, get a good cross section of several verticals. Is there, when you're looking across the ecosystem, which verticals seem to be moving the fastest in terms of adoption of these new tools? Is it insurance or education or home services? Any particular verticals where you're seeing more advancement than others?
Great question. I know that in terms of verticals that are not moving as quickly as other verticals are the ones that are very compliance heavy today, which came clearly through on the survey results as well. So if you look at, for example, education, obviously education, very compliance heavy focused vertical. I would say that's one of the ones where respondents feel that actually that's the slowest moving entry in terms of implementation of AI. Medicare, funny enough, was the number one vertical that was the quickest. And Medicare is also highly compliance regulated, but I think that's pretty interesting. I think there's a lot of AI being utilized in contact strategies and other means. Solar, while solar, I think as a vertical took a pretty hefty dip in the past 18 months. Solar, because of that hefty dip and because of that challenge within the model itself, AI is being actually executed at a very quick pace. And I think generally speaking, home services is definitely up there as well. We work with publicly traded companies that are slow in moving things, but they have utilized their AI agents for contact strategies, which is something that 6 months ago I did not think was going to be done that quickly. Insurance, on the other hand, I think it's more actually front-facing. We talked a little bit about how the form is evolving. I think there's more progress on the form side than per se on the back-end side in terms of what we're seeing. But in general, I completely agree with what Robin is saying. Like we're really at the beginning of having companies use AI to its fullest, and that came very clearly through as well. 2/3 of people say that only 20% of their operational activities that they feel could be automated has only been automated today. And that's a crazy stat, right? 2/3 of the people, only 20% of their activities that they feel should be automated is automated today. So I think there's a lot of catching up that needs to be done. And to that point, this is a year to catch up. Otherwise, you might be left behind.
Yeah. Matt, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because sort of as we're doing a bunch of testing there, and I think it sort of exposes what I would say are maybe like the gaps that you sometimes don't realize with human agents. And what I mean is, if we don't have transparency on sources or information, a human can easily overcome that, but it's harder to train the AI model on all of the corner cases that may exist out there. And so I think it's for us to get to find success, it's both on the metrics, but for the metrics to work, we've got to train the agent and get it to deliver on the outcomes we're looking for, and that oftentimes exposes where, okay, there could be a gap on the compliance side where we say, okay, we've got to solve for something new to help the agent enable them there, or on the transparency side of saying, hey, how do I get the agent the information it needs to be successful, and do I get that information today? If I don't get that information today from my sources, then I have to change what I'm doing to help enable the AI agent to be successful. And that may mean, to Bas's point earlier, changing my lead flows, changing what information I ingest over APIs, changing the information that's presented to a customer on the front end landing pages, right? Because to build that training rigor requires the data. If I don't have the data, it's hard to build that training rigor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's changing gears, just or pivoting just a bit. What's the ultimately, what's the impact here on the attribution space equation? How does or what does this really mean for data flow and data services? Bas, if we could start with you there.
That's a great question, Ian, and I think one that's top of mind for many, because attribution is still a challenge today. Many companies are not passing down their attribution because their attribution data might not be as actionable as they would like it to be. There's so many tools today that companies are developing. PX developed a tool, but I think there's many other companies in the space today that can transcribe calls, for example, and auto disposition calls. And if you look from a technology point of view, like there is no reason not to disposition calls or not to do proper attribution based on the steps that can be taken. That's one. But I think what's happening in the meantime is if you look upstream in terms of what's happening with Google paid search, for example, attribution is getting harder. Like where every consumer that you would interact with came through a pay click or an SEO click before, many consumers are now getting through Google Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude for that matter. And attribution definitely gets harder if the consumer is actually coming from a search from some of those platforms. And I think everyone expects that to continue to rapidly increase in terms of like where consumers are coming from, right? Like how consumers are interacting with their search queries. They're getting much longer. They're not going to Google.com anymore. They're really conversationally are interacting with in a chat perspective how they're doing the request. So for that regard, I think it's going to be interesting to think about how that's going to be attributed, because that dollar that you spent can maybe not be found if it comes from a Google Gemini or ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Robin, what are the conversations that you're having around attribution right now?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like they're going in two different directions. One is it seems like people who really want us to get clear on attribution are the people that should be pausing to think before they act on attribution. It's almost as if the pattern we're seeing is if you really care about attribution, you probably have to pause and get back again to the simpler method. And I think the reason for that is often we've gotten so complex in how we think about attribution that it becomes easy to mask some of the simpler questions of how do we drive revenue. And so we often, when somebody is talking to us about, we need to get the attribution rate, it's like, okay, first, let's start with, do you know who your best customers are? Let's start with answering the simple questions. Are you swimming in the right pool? And then how do we make that repeatable and scalable? And I think by pulling the curtain back on all these different places where attribution can hide, boss, I completely agree. It's like when you look at any of your scores, something can be totally hidden. You cannot follow the dollar. So if you can't follow the dollar, I think you have to go back to the very simple principles of how do I meet my customers where they are, and then kind of reverse engineer attribution. So we're kind of, because we are not an attribution platform, we often have to go back to those principles pieces. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, then your conversion rates start to tick up, and then attribution becomes less of the hot seat because conversion's actually working. So we've kind of found that ends up being a little bit of a backdoor into the real problem we're trying to solve when we get really focused on attribution. Not to say attribution doesn't matter, because you want to know which channels are performing well, but that's been kind of where we start the conversation.
Yeah, and Matt, Matt, over where you guys are, what is ultimately, how do you or how is the way that you measure performance changing, and B, how is the approach to attribution changing?
I think overall, right, is we've always had to have rules to determine, overlap always exists. Some channels are always direct attribution, some channels are indirect attribution. If I run TV ads, most people don't pick up the phone and respond to a number that's on that. And, you have some channels where your response is immediate and some is response over time. So I think, we always have to have rules there and determine what happens as overlap occurs and what happens with direct and indirect attribution channels. And to me, that's no different now than it's always been, right? Meaning we've always had, in our business, we've always had mass media campaigns, which are TV and radio and things like billboards, where we know we're spending the media and we know that those dollars don't show up associated with those investments directly. And then we have things that are, almost 100% direct attribution, like paid search, right? And then we have some stuff that plays in the middle. And we always have to make those determinations and evaluations of channels based on, where we want to spend money. And I can go down to the individual, channel tactic partner level, right? And I think it's more just understanding what's happening in the value of the channels and where the customers are coming through versus and I guess my point is that's not something new or different. That's just, it's constantly evolving based on where the consumers are showing up and how they choose to interact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we can, let's get specific now, just because this audience at LeadsCon has heard so much, of the 30,000 foot AI conversation. Let's drill down into specifics of what actual use cases for right now, what's being done within your own organizations and workflows, not the roadmap, not the pilot that's still in evaluation, the things that are live and working right now for you guys. What are the problems that you're trying to solve? What did you deploy, and what actually changed about it? So if we could go around the horn, maybe starting with you, Matt.
Yeah, I think agentic AI, so call center, inbound, outbound, chat, things where there are some of the lead flows with some of the online platforms. Google has some platforms where the customer interacts through message leads. So all of that kind of customer contact, I'd say, is probably the primary thing where we're testing and trying to solve and expand. Our business, the actual customer interaction is in home. So it's kind of the antithesis of an AI model, right? We have people installing HVAC systems, which are not going to be AI anytime soon. So it's really just that front end customer piece of communication.
Yeah. Robin?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts that we're seeing. Because we have AI built into our product, we often are trying to be out in front of our clients, then seeing what was working for them. And two things that I'll say are working for our clients that I think are informing us as well is sometimes it's about a machine learning model, which is kind of a form of AI. And sometimes it is about the raw data to then inform your own agents. And in both cases, I think as Matt was describing, for call centers, we're seeing people adopt there, et cetera. The place where we are using it internally that I think then dovetails into being valuable for any type of business is really thinking of ourselves as context consultants, people who, AI is only as good as the context that you give it. And that is very much what we are in the business of. So if we can get good at internally having really good context that we are feeding our own agents, that's helping our engineers build better products, that's helping our sales and our client services have more context about their clients before they're going into calls. And I think us being able to kind of eat our own dog food in that part is allowing us to then come up with more innovative ways to help, Matt and others kind of in this space think about that in-home experience. We're not the ones going in home, but I think that same piece can apply to having a more personalized journey.
Yeah. Bas, those are great points and great insights, Robin. Bas, from where you sit, what are you seeing from your clients in terms of real life applications? What's getting you excited?
It would have been so nice if I could have said it to you, Ian, that in the last 4 or 5 sessions that we've done together, it was actually not me, but I sent my agent to do these sessions with you, right? That's
wouldn't be surprised.
I'm craving that day though, like that I not do this with you, Ian.
What are you saying?
There's a couple of things. I think I'll answer the question first of all. What we've been focusing on internally in the past 18 months or so, which is definitely like similar to what Robin says, like enhancing our data sets, getting as much data, actionable data available as possible. And that means that we partner with companies such as Faraday to extract and to add data on a lead to be smarter in terms of the decisions that can be made with the next lead that goes through PX. There's a couple of clear areas that make most sense to, in our point of view, add automation and AI. Obviously, compliance is one of them. Today, we have about 1,600 sites that on a given day are transacting leads through PX. So to audit them all, automation is key, but we're starting to deploy a lot of AI capabilities on that, which is really cool. So we can score all the sites that are going through PX and help publishers to actually guide them to do a better job. A lot in modeling, like predictive modeling, like maturity curves, baking periods, things like that, where historically that was purely historical data analysis, but to fully automate that with AI. And then I think the last one I already mentioned it internally, what we're doing in regards of allowing clients to automate their disposition data in an easier way through a product that we build out to record calls, transcribe those recordings, and then auto disposition them with guidance on what the sales agent can do better as well. But to answer your question, Ian, in terms of what we see clients are doing, I think in the past 12 months, there's been a lot of development in terms of context strategies through AI. So today, I would estimate that about 40% of our clients have utilized one form of an AI agent. That can be through text, that can be through outbound, that can be through a chat in any capability. So I think there's still a lot of room to grow there. Everyone is, I think, focused on content creation to shift their content strategy to fit in better with AI in QBRs that we have with a lot of our clients that are either 1 or 2 day QBRs. I think a lot of time is being spent on making sure that it's a cohesive marketing strategy where content plays a super large role, and not only on first-party content or other websites, but even through publisher websites that are an extension of the content as well of the brand. So I think there's a lot of interesting items in there, and I think to really predict if a lead is going to be the right lead to talk to and at what time. I think that's the big thing that obviously a lot of companies are focusing on. Still, brands are dialing 12 to 16 times on a lead, and there must be a better way to get that consumer in front of the brand in in a better experience, but also with a better outcome. So a lot of companies are definitely focused on that today, and I'm looking forward to dive a little bit deeper next week on that topic as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that does take us to time. We do have much more to cover, but that's really the point of this preview. This is exactly the type of conversations that we're going to be digging into on stage, in depth, with this group, plus two other exec perspectives that we're going to be adding to the panel next Thursday, April 23rd at LeadsCon in Las Vegas. If you work in performance marketing, lead gen, or anywhere in the demand and growth ecosystem, this is the room that you need to be in. Don't miss this keynote. Registration is still open at leadscon.com. We'd love to see you there. Thanks again to Bas, Robin, and Matt. And from the entire team here at LeadsCon, we can't wait to see everyone next week in Las Vegas. Until then, take care, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.